I'm Rob Turka. My guest this week is Sam Provance, who was the Army's computer guy at Abu Ghraib from the fall of 2003 to the fall of 2004. He was the only military intelligence soldier to come forward when the abuse scandal was investigated. Sergeant Provance was the first insider to inform the world that children had been held at Abu Ghraib. His whistleblowing went as far as appearing on ABC News with Peter Jennings and testifying before Congress. He was honorably discharged from the Army in 2006. Here now is Sam Provance.
By occupation in the military, I'm an intelligence analyst, but at Abu Ghraib, I was placed in charge of the systems administration.
Did you actually witness any prisoner abuse?
No, not with my own two eyes. My job allowed me to kind of float around from place to place where the intelligence soldiers worked. Even the commander's offices were all in one location. And I wasn't just fixing computers, I was fixing printers and stuff too. I would install it to begin with, and then I would have to help maintain it. And so I kind of went all over the place inside, and I would just meet people and talk to people, and some of them, were my friends.
What were some of the more memorable, maybe shocking things that you heard about?
Well, one of the most shocking things I ever heard came from a staff sergeant that was a part of what I could only describe as the out-processing wing. It was like a newly formed office where they were going to decide who gets to go, basically. And she was telling me how screwed up the system was. The worst part about it was that most people that were there for absolutely no reason whatsoever. So, up until that time, I was under the impression that the majority of the people there were there for a reason, whether they were part of Saddam's army or a new insurgency or criminals of some kind or whatever, but it just wasn't the case. So you had innocent people being held there, and then at the same time, they weren't letting almost none of them go. And then when they did let people go, they would tell, the media that, all kinds of horrible things were happening to them, like cigarettes being put out in their ears, or being told their families are going to be raped by American soldiers, things of that nature.
According to the Red Cross, somewhere between 70 and 90% of the prisoners at Abu Ghraib were innocent. So that sounds like it's kind of in line with what you were saying.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think that the interrogators, by and large, didn't believe it, convinced themselves that these people were guilty, or didn't care because they're all Iraqis, or what do you think they were thinking?
Well, the interrogators all believed that they were all bad guys. I mean, that was their criticism towards me anytime I would try to explain to them that these people probably never belonged there, because I would routinely tell them, you need to be careful about what you're doing, because it's only a matter of time before this place is going to be investigated, just like Guantanamo Bay was already being investigated that far back. And they would just laugh at me. And then just wonder, why I would even care, saying that if I was outside of the prison grounds, these same people I'm defending would probably slit my throat.
It seems to me that if you're going to be imprisoning people because you think they're enemy combatants, the military cannot know exactly who is guilty and exactly who is innocent. So you can be very careful about who you bring into the prison to make sure that you get hardly any innocent people in there. Or you can cast a very broad net and you can get anybody who might possibly be guilty, which apparently was done in this case. But in that case, most of the people you're going to get are innocent because from the military's point of view, they're being on the safe side by getting anybody who might possibly be innocent. Talking to people who downplay the abuses at Abu Ghraib, I can't get my point across to them that even if you support torturing guilty people, how can you support torturing indiscriminately at Abu Ghraib, since if the military is doing its job as they see it and casting a broad net, then most of these people are going to be innocent. Am I being simplistic, or does that sum it up?
You're absolutely right. All the soldiers I knew and people I knew had the perspective that every person that was in that prison was 100% guilty of something. And that's also a way I would say the civilian interrogators corrupted the military interrogators. You know, a lot of the military interrogators weren't even real interrogators. They were soldiers that were put into the position of being an interrogator, much like me being put in the position of the computer guy when, you know, I have no training, but, you know, they kind of give you a little crash course and then tell you to get it done.
We keep hearing that torture is necessary in some circumstances, like the proverbial ticking time bomb.
There was no ticking time bombs. The only ticking time bomb was the pressure put on them to produce an intelligence product. Before it was all over with, Colonel Pappas had instituted a quota system so that at the end of the day, no matter what they got or they didn't get, they had to have a report done. So you had all kinds of basically garbage being put together and sent off into the intel world where it was actually used as credible information. They're just impatient. The intelligence world isn't like the rest of the Army where you have teamwork. You know, in the intelligence world, everybody's out to make a name for themselves. It's very, very competitive and very dog-eat-dog. Torturing people to get information won't get you the truth necessarily, but it will get you a confession. And, you know, as far as an interrogator is concerned, that's fine with him. The interrogators I dealt with, civilian or military, they didn't care if what the guy was confessing to was true or false. All they know is they had information to work with and to write a report about and make the boss happy.
How young were the children at Abu Ghraib?
Apparently all ages. He learned about them quite early on. It was the most restricted place on the grounds. I mean, it was like the one place I wasn't allowed to go. And I thought it was so weird, and I asked the interrogators, you know, why do we have women and children here? And they said because they had it better at the prison than on the street.
Mm-hmm.
But I come to find out later it was because they were using them as part of their interrogations. They were rounding up entire families. And when they would go and take a guy, they would take his whole family and then actually use different members of the family as part of the interrogations.
Yeah, tell us about the case of the Iraqi general and his son.
Originally, we were supposed to interview or interrogate this general. And the only reason I even agreed to it was because the interrogator was a guy I knew, and I knew I could trust him not to be an animal or to put me in a situation in the interrogation that I would not want to be a part of. So I volunteered to be his analyst and to be the security for the interrogation. But once he arrived, they told him that they had already broken the general. But as a kind of a consolation, they said, you know, we'll let you interview his son. So we had to go get his son, who they had in general population. And it was really a pathetic situation, getting this very young-looking, frail kid out of this mass of humanity that these general populations were. I mean, it was like just basically a big mud pit with a bunch of men. So anyways, we interrogated him, but it wasn't, I wouldn't call it an interrogation because it was pretty cut and dry question and answers from my friend. And the kid, he didn't know anything. He was only guilty of being this guy's son, and he didn't know about his dad's activities. And even the guy, the general, didn't know anything. The whole episode was just counterproductive, because even the kid said he was happy at the beginning, but after seeing everything that's happened and what's happened